So festival season is well upon us in the UK now. We are right into the middle of festival season. And as someone who shoots a lot of live music, I thought it would be a good time to kind of talk about, festival photography, live music festival photography, and what it is that I pack in particularly when I'm shooting a festival. So we're going to jump straight into it, but if you don't know who I am, my name is Sophia Carey and I am a photographer mostly specialising in portrait and music photography. But for this video, let's just jump straight into it. Let's talk about camera bodies in particular. So for me, I try to always take 2 camera bodies to shoot a festival. Last year, my go-to setup was the Sony a7 III alongside the Lumix S1. That was mainly because of lens choice, which I'll kind of get onto later on. This year, my go-to setup for anything really, like live music related, festival related, is a Sony a7 III and then a Sony a7 IV as my second camera. So even though I wouldn't call it an essential to have 2 camera bodies, I would definitely recommend it. For me, I like the mirrorless Sony system. It's lightweight, it's high quality, they're easy to use once you kind of get into that system. So I definitely recommend both of those cameras. I also recommend having cameras that have dual memory card slots. So both the Sony a7 III and the Sony a7 IV have room for 2 SD cards, which you can record onto simultaneously in each camera. So this is great because it just means that you have a little bit of added security. You're shooting really long days at festivals and you wouldn't want to shoot something and then the card corrupts and you lose that section of the festival or even a full day. I definitely recommend, if you can, get a camera body that has 2 SD card slots. When it comes to lenses, I personally have a bit of a range of lenses that I take, but I don't try to overcomplicate it too much. So for me, my go-to for everything is a 35mm 1.4 prime. It's a Sigma lens designed for Canon, but I use it on my Sony with a MC11 adapter. Having a prime like the 35mm can be really useful because it's stopping down to 1.4, and when you are in maybe stages, sets, areas, nighttime shooting where you don't have as much light as maybe you want to, it can be great to have that option to be able to stop down and shoot really fast. Alongside the 35mm prime, I also take an 18mm prime, which is just great for those wide shots, especially wide crowd stuff, or things if there's maybe a big band or multiple DJs and you're shooting quite close up or in a closely contained area or stage. Having a lens that's wide can be really useful. And then of course you want to get some zoom lenses. So for me, I usually shoot with the 28-70, which is another Sigma lens. I find that is a really nice focal length for getting wide stuff and also zooming in a little bit, and that's a 2.8 lens, so it's pretty fast. My other zoom lens that I use is a 70-200, and this is great for the bigger festivals or the bigger stages, where the 70mm, that doesn't quite cut it, you need to be that little bit closer. Having a lens that goes to 200 can be great, not only for shooting in the pit if the stage is really high up, but also for things like if you're at front of house and you don't just want to be doing like big crowd shots, for example. So yeah, when it comes to lenses, I like to think about fast lenses, and I also like to think about having a little bit of a range when it comes to focal lengths. You don't need to go overboard, especially if you're shooting a festival where you can't put everything down or have a safe space to put your equipment. You might not want to carry that many lenses on you, in which case zooms come really in handy when that is the case, because you can get a wide range of focal lengths without using too many lenses. So next up, you want to have plenty of spare batteries and SD cards. When it comes to SD cards, I recommend the SanDisk 128GB. I usually have 2 of those in each camera, and then I also have like a range of 128GB and 64GB just spare SD cards in case things are corrupt or I fill up an SD card or whatever the case may be. I have a few spares. I also take a flash. I usually take the Godox V1 flash, but honestly I don't use that very often. It's just there for kind of a backup, maybe if I was doing backstage portraits and I really needed one, but personally I don't tend to use flash a lot when it comes to festivals. Next up, let's talk about editing software. So software, hardware, equipment. So when you're shooting for a festival, depending on who you're shooting for, you might be expected to live edit. So you're editing on site during the festival. For that, I take my MacBook Pro. It's a 2015 15-inch MacBook, so it's pretty old, but it does the job. And I also take usually two SSD hard drives. So they're external hard drives. They're solid state, so there's no spinning parts that might get damaged, and they're really quick. I personally use the Samsung T7s. I'll link them in the description. I haven't had any problems with them, touch wood, and I definitely recommend those. They're really small as well, so easy to throw into your bag. So we've kind of covered like the basics, you know, your camera, your lens, your batteries, your SD cards. Next, we're going to talk about the extras. So this is probably maybe the most important part of the video, because these extras are the things that maybe are not that obvious when it comes to shooting a festival, but are equally as important. So my first extra as such is charging equipment. Obviously you're going to take chargers, phone chargers, camera chargers. But one of the things when it comes to charging equipment, people forget is, you know, you're probably going to be in a room with other photographers, other videographers, other people working for media or press who are all going to be fighting over the same plug sockets. So I recommend taking some sort of extension cable. Personally, I use something like this. It's like a 4-way extension cable, but it's also got these little USB and USB-C ports, so you can plug just like your phone or something like that into it. Definitely recommend these because, you know, it just gives you a little bit more option in terms of how many things you can have charging at once. If you don't have enough room in your bag for an extension cable, maybe get something like this, which is like a fast charging adapter plug. Yeah, so it has these different ports, so you can, you know, put in your phone, like if it's got a USB-C, or maybe your camera batteries. So for example, I have this camera battery thing that fits 2 batteries in it, and it is USB like plug-in. So you can just plug that into, let me get it right, into that. You could also fit your phone into that or wherever. Again, just something to think about really in terms of giving yourself more options when it comes to charging, making sure that you're powered up all day. Next up, you want to think about clothing. So, you know, festival season tends to be in the summer, tends to be hot. In the UK, it's pretty hot at the moment. So you might anticipate really hot weather and be shooting in shorts and a t-shirt, and then the heavens open. You know, this happened to me at Parklife the other weekend. We had a really hot weekend, but then on the Sunday there was like a storm. So having maybe a change of clothes, change of socks, a jumper, a hoodie, that sort of thing that you can throw on or you can change into if you need to. It's a really long day to be uncomfortable, so comfort is definitely key. On that note, water bottles, sun cream, plasters, all of those things are really important to make sure that, you know, you're comfortable as you can be all weekend or over however many days you're shooting. For example, you don't want a sunburn on like a Saturday morning and need to be shooting until the Sunday night. Next up, earplugs. They're really important. Having some sort of ear protection. You're working in really loud environments for a really prolonged period of time, and your hearing is really important. So make sure that you invest in some sort of ear protection just to kind of put your mind at ease. In terms of camera bags, I usually take my normal camera bag, which is the Wondered Provoke 21 litres. I literally just did a review on that, so if you're interested, I'll link that in the description. That fits everything from, you know, 2 camera bodies, my laptop, all my chargers, all of that stuff. Sometimes I'll also take a tote with like little extras, and I usually take like a bag that will go across my body. It's black, so it doesn't stand out too much, and it's got plenty of zips. A back zip that I have like pressed to my body, so that's great for things like phone, keys, things you don't want to fall out. And then the front zip, I put my spare batteries, earplugs, you know, things that I need to access quickly. But shooting festivals is really fun. It's a great time of year. It's one of my favourite times of the year. So I think like the idea is just to prepare. Preparation is really key in anything, but especially event photography where you can't, you know, miss a moment. So preparing, keeping safe and comfortable and hydrated is really important. If you're interested in a little bit more about, you know, the actual shooting process, how you shoot live events, live gigs, festivals, I have just put out a new Skillshare class all about that. So it's about editing your photos, it's about preparing to shoot a gig, it's about shooting the gig itself, and I will link that in the description. You can access it with a free trial from Skillshare that I will put in the description as well. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.